What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. It's another build that we're having on the channel here today. Another sort of one of those builds that's a bit sort of far left field and a little bit sort of obscure and different. Something that I really like to show you guys as we go along. So this is one of our customers, 1FZ-80 series Land Cruisers. So it's a little bit different to your standard 1HZ Land Cruiser. So we're actually doing this one as a turboed 1FZ. So the story goes that the owner actually purchased this car already turboed. It's already got a built automatic gearbox. It was already powered by Haltech. You know, apparently quite a nice little rig when he bought it, and it was all meant to be pretty good, but he drove it for a little while and it started doing some funny stuff. He then realized it was getting water in the bores and it ended up hydrolocking, and when he went to pull the head off, he found that all the head studs or bolts, whatever they were actually very, very loose. So it's our suspicion that it might have lifted the head at some point, and you know, that's allowed water to get into them bores and hydrolock it, and you know, it's come to this point here. So he's actually pulled the head off already. That's as far as he got with it, and it's been sitting for quite a while since. So he's brought it here to us. We're going to do a full forged 1FZ build for it, and retune and get him on his merry way with a nice, properly set up, properly tuned turboed 1FZ forged motor that's going to be nice and reliable for him. So not unlike any other Toyota motor pretty much built between, like, you know, in the 90s era, the 1FZ has a massive potential to make some really good power. So you got your classic Toyota rigidity, but you know, in a 4.5 litre inline 6 variant. They are huge capacity, they love power, they love boost. They're really, really great engines. So it's lucky for us here in Queensland, Golby's parts actually do stock quite a bit of parts for the 1FZ. So Golby's actually do, you know, obviously see the potential in the 1FZ, even though they are less of a popular platform. But we are able to get a lot of parts that are readily available to us to get this thing built, which is very exciting. So we've checked the numbers on the turbo and done some research. What we can see is it's actually a Garrett GT32. Is what it actually is. So quite a small turbo specifically for such a large capacity engine. So that is going to be our limiting factor for this build. For that reason, it's probably only going to make, we predict, sort of in the mid 300 area horsepower at the wheels. You know, it's a little bit overkill going to forged bottom end for that sort of power when we're going to be limited by that turbo. But at this point, he really just wants this thing to be super reliable so he can go to some proper four-wheel drive touring in it. But actually fully forged, when we finish this engine, the actual engine will have all of the potential of something like a 2G, probably more. These things in Pro Mod have actually, you know, they run massive horsepowers. Ben Bray actually has a Pro Mod car with a turboed 1FZ, and yeah, they're incredible engines. So hope you enjoy this little build series of this little out of the ordinary sort of thing we're doing, and hopefully we can teach you a little bit about this platform as we go along the way. Righto, so I started that video the other day, and after about my 10th walk back to the shed to get tools, I was just like, screw this, I'm not doing this outside. So we waited till today. We're going to drag the cruiser inside and get that motor out in here. So gotta get the big FG out of here, and then we'll drag that cruiser in and do it inside where the tools are, where we don't have to keep walking in and outside. Alright guys, so we've run into a bit of an issue here where we don't have any bolts that are actually the right size to fit this, to put it on the engine stand. We just went for a quick run into town to have a look at the hardware there, but they don't have any either. So unfortunately we can't do anything about that today. We're gonna have to go for a run further out tomorrow to try and get some from a better hardware shop. But at the very least, we're just gonna drop the sump off this and pull a piston and rod out and measure one up, because that was the whole point of this exercise at the moment, is that we need to confirm what size these pistons are so we know what size this bore is, because it's obviously been rebuilt at some point. So we've got to confirm what size the bore is so that we can start ordering our new rotating assembly for this thing. We need to confirm what size pistons we want to get. So yeah, the point of today was to get it to that point so we can order these parts in so that they can, you know, be on their way and start getting here, because at the moment we're finding our biggest problem here at the shop is just getting parts with COVID and everything. Between suppliers and freight companies and everyone being all up in the air about COVID and stuff, it's just made everything a real pain in the ass, and it's dragging everything out heaps. So want to get that done today. So anyway, we'll do that, and then we'll just sit it on a tire or something out of the way until we get these bolts to put it on the engine stand. Righto guys, holy crap, what an absolute mess this motor is, like real bad. So anyway, we got one piston out. We had to take a second out just as a sanity check for how bad it was. Righto guys, it's the next day. After pulling those two pistons out, we sort of just went ahead and pulled the rest out. We thought we had to have a look at what the hell is going on with the rest of them as well. And yeah, we pulled them all out, and literally there is not one intact piston. Every single piston is cracked. This is all pieces of piston all over the place. All of the skirts have this scoring. Number one is definitely the worst though. Yeah, it's freaking wild. So we did ask the owner of the car as well about a few things. Apparently the car was built, apparently it did like 60,000 Ks. You can see this sort of damage on the skirts and these cracked ringlins. They are reminiscent of pretty much essentially a really bad lean out, or you know, really bad knocking and a really bad lean out. The thing is though, generally every time we've seen a motor that's gone through something like a bad lean out, it's always very obvious in the top of the pistons, which the tops are actually quite in good nick. Like the tops are actually quite good. There's no obvious damage to the tops. Usually if there's a lean out, it starts melting the sides of the tops of the pistons first, not the skirts. So it is very, very strange to us, but apparently this motor was built, had done 60,000 Ks. We have taken a heap of measurements of the pistons and the bores, and although it's very difficult because there's so much material missing off the pistons to get a really accurate measurement, it does seem that there is plenty sufficient piston and bore wall clearance. So even if the guy who built it, who then sold it to the owner who owns it now, lied about how many Ks it's done, the owner had it for a month before it did this. He reckons it suddenly lost power and he had to limp it to like a servo before they could sort of get it towed and that sort of thing. So we have to assume that it's been a lean out, something's gone wrong, because we can't accept that it would be built with such tight clearances to do this sort of damage and run at all. Not only that, you know, they're half the hour over. Yeah, we can't accept that someone has put this motor together who knows enough to get it together and yet wouldn't have done piston or ball wall clearances, or at the very least wouldn't have noticed that it was way too tight upon building it. So at this stage we're going with the fact that it must have been a big lean out. We're going to pay very, very close attention to the fuel system and everything when we put this car back together, do a lot of checks, make sure everything's Mickey Mouse when we put it back together. And we're going to get the head out of the back of the car today and have a look at the valves as well, because if it's been that bad of a lean out that it's done that much damage to the pistons, I dare say we might be in some trouble with some valves. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at the moment. With the information that we've got, is it must have been a lean out. But yeah, to me, this is the first time I've ever seen such damage caused by something like that, where you don't see damage in the top of the piston. Anyway, it's wild, but it's the beauty of doing this work. Heaps of new stuff all the time. So this is what the head actually looks like, guys. It's actually still got the plugs in it even. And looking at this head, there is no obvious evidence of any lean out going on. Which is good for the head, obviously. It's good for the rebuild because the head still looks in pretty good condition. You can see there's a fair bit of like pitting in the actual head casting, which would indicate probably a bit of knock, a fair bit of knock. But Alright guys, so we're getting a bit further into this thing. I massively enjoy pulling down new engines that I've never sort of seen anything before. I love it, it's great. But anyway, it's really weird setup in these things. So this is actually your power steering is actually driven off a series of gears off the crank instead of off an actual pulley like most cars would be, which is quite interesting. This is actually the oil pump drive. So the oil pump has a spline drive, and the oil pump's actually part of the timing cover encasing. And that's obviously to drive the oil pump. You can actually get it apart from the front. And that's something we're definitely gonna have to take a really good look at, considering how badly the piston skirts in this thing were. So a lot of that material off the piston skirts would have contaminated this oil. So that oil pump's gonna have to be something we look very, very closely at to make sure that it's okay and the gears in it aren't too bad. So, but yeah, it's a bit of a different setup. Haven't seen much sort of like this. The head's much the same. The way the actual cam gears are on the head are the same sort of thing, where they're actually you got a single chain and then they're gear driven off each other. And I believe this is what the Z naming convention is for Toyota. It's like your narrow angle, close cam sort of series of Toyota engine. But yeah, so anyway, I'm gonna keep going with this thing, keep pulling it down. We found that this actually, there's a fair bit of movement here. You can see there, if I'm turning that, that's a lot of movement there, which is literally, if you have a look down here, is just how much that gear on the crank can move on the keyway, which to us seems a bit excessive to have that much sort of slop. But again, like we were saying, this is our first FZ that we've actually pulled down properly and had a lot to do with. So still just stuff we've got to pay close attention to and look into as we go. But yeah, pretty impressive little unit. So also over this side they actually have like an inbuilt oil cooler. So this is your actual oil heat exchanger. So this is all a coolant area, and you have oil feed in which actually passes through the coolant here, which is there Toyota's sort of internal oil heat exchange oil cooling system, which is a bit different. So that's pretty cool too. So anyway, we're nearly there. We're about to flip it over and get the crank out once we get these gears off the front, have a good look at what the crank's like, and that'll be this motor pulled down. So we're pretty sure that that amount of movement there is actually just so that you can get this gear off without having to move these, because they're like a helical engagement. You have to sort of turn it to disengage it to get it off. So we've had a look. Once you actually put the timing gear and then the balancer on and tighten them up, it actually tightens it hard against this area on the crank.
Every time.
Always bleeding.
Why? How? How?
So it actually, once that's tightened up, that should eliminate a lot of that movement.
Yeah, that locks everything into position once you do that.
Yeah. Little oil squirter.
Oil squirter for the timing chain. That's pretty cool.
So yeah, classic Toyota over engineering, doing really nice work.
Did you tell them it's got the oil squirters for the undersides of the pistons as well?
No, I don't think I did. So yeah,
We'll flip it over in a minute. We'll show them.
Actually has, much like an RB or a J, a factory turbo. We've got actual oil squirters in the block, as well as obviously the oil squirters in the rods as well. Yep. So yeah, classic Toyota, very good oiling system, and just well engineered products. Righto guys, so the good news is that the crank is fine. It'll clean up. It'll actually be quite a good thing. A lot of the main bearings were very sad, as were the rod bearings. A lot of stuff has gone through this motor. It was incredibly unhappy. So it's gonna get full acid bath, fully cleaned out before assembly with our new forged parts. But at the very least, we've achieved our goal. We know we're gonna go 1 mil overbore with this thing, so we can start ordering our rotating assembly and start getting this build underway and start getting some parts here. So for now, it's just going to stay out here because we're out of room in the engine room until we get Brad's RB25 back together. We need a bigger engine room already, which is it's becoming a problem. We need more engine room. So the only other thing we're going to do is just continue dismantling what's left of the head. But again, not a lot worth noting or filming. So we'll pull up the video here. But overall, first 1FZ we've pulled down. Very impressed. It's funny, I actually saw a meme the other day that sort of was pretty funny. It said that Toyota only built the 7M to raise revenue for servicing because nothing else they built at the time would break. And that was a good one. I liked it. So no exception with the 1FZ. Brilliant bit of engineering. You can see this oil squirter for the chain. It actually also has a little squirter in the bottom for the gear. So just little things like that. We're gonna have to replace this little bearing here because this is gonna have to go to get acid wash. So it's another little bearing we'll have to replace. So that's what the gear that actually drives the oil pump runs in. So yeah, very well designed, very well engineered, very impressed. So anyway, probably be a while until we pick this back up because we're probably gonna have to wait a while for parts, and then we have to get it off to the machine shop to get it cleaned and then balanced and everything before we get it back. Anyway guys, very keen to get this build together and get it on the way and get it on the dyno and see what we can make out of it. I think it's gonna be a really good thing. I'm a huge fan of the 80 series, as you know by our 80 series. And we're a big fan of this platform, so very excited to finally be doing one. Anyway, thank you for watching. We appreciate everyone who watches. As always, head to the store, buy yourself a shirt or a sticker, support the channel, it goes a long way. Smash like, smash subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out, see you, bye.